So when I first started teaching, I spent about 2 months preparing for back to school, and I didn't enjoy my summer because I would be in my classroom from 7 a.m. till about 6 p.m., and I would often bring work home with me. And honestly, looking back now, I focus on all the wrong things, and it cost me a ton of time over the actual school year. So now, when I set up my classroom in less than a week, and I actually work with teachers around the world every year to get their entire classroom set up and ready to go for the first day of school in less than a month. So, and I do all that through my program, Classroom Kickstart. Well, today we're going to be diving into the top 5 organization hacks to save you hours during back to school. So, with that being said, let's dive in. So, after coaching new and first year teachers to help set up their classroom over the summer, I've come up with 5 organization hacks that are the top 5 that all of them swear by and rave about when they go through my Classroom Kickstart program. So, the first one is a student resource center. So when you are setting up your classroom, it's easy to just sporadically put stuff around the room, but when you do this, what often happens is your students are getting up and they're distracting each other because they have to go every which way to grab their resources. So that's why one of the first things we talk about in Classroom Kickstart mini course is to set up your classroom with the flow in mind. This helps minimize disruptive behavior and distractions during transitions. And many of us teachers know that transitions are actually the #1 time that most disruptive behavior happens. So, how can we make that more smoothly? We can be more intentional with how we set up our room. So, one place for when you create one place for student resources instead of having them throughout the room, it makes it a lot easier and it minimizes distractions and it keeps students from talking to each other throughout the day as they go to get things. So that's why I recommend to create one area which is going to be your student resource center. This could include stuff like extra materials, student books, student manipulatives, a turn-in basket or a milk crate, pencil sharpeners, center's cart, and I'll talk about this later in depth, agenda area, extra paper, turn-in basket for homework, you name it. But having one spot that students aren't running into each other when they're going throughout the room to grab resources is going to help minimize distractions during transitions. And when you teach the procedure to go get a resource or a material, you can teach it to where only one student is allowed in the student resource center at a time. And if you see somebody who is in that area, you need to wait until they sit back down or leave that area before you get up to go grab something. Or you can have teacher helpers that go to the student resource center to grab the materials for the students. So that's one thing I highly recommend, or the first organization hack I highly recommend you implement this school year. The second organization hack I highly recommend that you use this school year to help save you time is the color code or classroom library. I've actually helped several teacher friends of mine do this over the summer. It's something I actually really enjoy doing, but it's especially relevant for elementary students because students in elementary have a vast variety of skills and levels they are at, and a kindergarten book is going to look vastly different than a 5th grade level book. So how can you organize them in a way that makes sense and actually meets your students to where they are? I do this through color coding. So that's why I recommend looking for a way to organize your library that is based off of level. So what I like to do for this is I like to go to AR Lookup or whichever system, organization system or leveling system your school uses for books. And I look up each book and level them. I assign a color to each level. So for example, kinder could be red, 1st grade could be yellow, and etc., etc., etc. And then after I assign a color to each level, I put a sticker on each spine based on that level's color. So for example, let's say I grab a Fly Guy book. Fly Guy is in the kinder first grade range. I'm going to take one of those for sale, like yard sale red stickers, and I'm going to tape it to the spine of the book. Now when my students are grabbing a book, I can tell them, hey, grab a red level book. They know now can grab something based off of their level, and it's easy to keep it organized. And in general, this is a great system because you can tell students to pick a book based on the color, and they're not constantly comparing each other because you don't say, oh, red is first grade. They just have different colors based on level. And it's easy to organize for you and your students. If you're moving classrooms, you can just keep all your reds together, all your yellows together. And as your students are checking out books, it's very easy for them to grab a book and put it back because it's in the same color shelf. And it's easy to keep organized for you and your students. And what I love the most about this is once you do it once, it's done forever. You can reuse it over and over again. So it takes a lot of time at first, like I said, but after you have done this with the majority of your books, as you buy more books or get more books, you can just simply look them up and color code them as you go and as you grow your library, and it's staying organized and it's easy for your students to use for years to come. Now that we talked about color coding your classroom library, which was the second organization hack, let's talk about the third classroom organization hack, which is a paper system. Now, when I first started teaching, my papers, honestly, it was a horror story. I had a 2 grade basket and a 2 vial basket that was always overflowing. I mean, stacked super high. I would put down papers and I would lose them mid-lesson, and I would, print out a resource just to lose them for the next year. And all of this stopped when I started to incorporate a paper system. So a paper system is the flow, like we did the setup of the classroom flow for your classroom. We do a paper flow for how you want papers to come in and out of your classroom and to stay organized. A couple ways you can do this. The first thing I recommend is to set up a filing cabinet with files now so it's easy to file later. So what I like doing is when I go into a classroom for the first time, I like doing it by grade level, and then by subject, then skill or standard. So for example, let's say I went into the school year as a new 2nd grade teacher and I wanted to set up my filing cabinet now so it's easier for later. Well, I don't necessarily need to do the grade because I'm just doing 2nd grade, but I could do it by subject. So I'll have reading, math, social studies, and science, whatever else I'm teaching, and then I'm going to go by skill or standard. So in math, we have 2-digit addition, we have 2-digit subtraction, and then we have mixed. So what I'm going to do, or I could look at my curriculum at the different skills we're going to teach, and I can make a file for each one of those. That way throughout the year, as I get a new resource, I could just put it in the already created file. So that's what I recommend when it comes to paper organization. And then I like to have a holding area. So I like to place a place to put my papers until I need them for that next week, because I like to plan and prep a couple weeks out at a time. So I actually had a hanging filing folder right next to the door so I couldn't put down on my desk and create clutter, and I would have it based off of days. So let's say I went through and I printed all the resources I'm going to need for next week. I could put all the resources I'm going to need for Monday in the first one, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then future weeks down below. So then I can just grab the resources as I teach throughout the day, and then they're set up for the whole week. And then once the week's over, I just take the extra from the bottom and I set it up again. All the resources for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This really worked for me because, like I said, it was very tempting to set papers down on my desk and lose them. But instead, since this hanging filing folder was hanging right next to the door, it was the first thing I did when I got into the classroom after my prep days, where I would print everything out and prep my materials, and I could put it right there, and I wasn't tempted to then put it on my desk. So filing right away as soon as you make copies is really important to prevent papers and copies from cluttering up your space. The fourth classroom organization hack I have for you is a digital system. So when it comes to your resources, it's very tempting to just download them, go search through your downloads, and then have maybe your computer reset every year, go through the TPT resources and search for that resource only to lose it, and then to buy another one, only to then find the first one that you liked more in the first place. So that's why I highly recommend setting up digital file folders before the school even starts on your desktop. Now, this looks exactly like the physical files that I recommended having in your filing cabinet, but just the digital version. So by grade, subject, skill, or standard. So for example, this could look like if I'm teaching second grade, I'm gonna have the different subjects. I'll put resources, and then I'm gonna put reading, math, social studies, science, etc. And then I'm gonna go into those folders and put skills. So 2-digit addition, 2-digit subtraction, mixed, and then etc., for example. So having those set up already makes it really easy that when I find a resource on TPT or just a resource for that lesson, I can then drag and drop and put it where it goes from the get-go, and I'm not tempted to just leave it in my downloads and then have to search for it in years to come. And this will actually save you time with planning in the future. Another thing I recommend doing is your email labels. So when it comes to email, I like to use my email as a to-do list, and I like to keep it at 0. So what I end up doing is I create email labels on the side that helps me organize the emails when they are done and completed, and deleting the ones I don't need. Some of the labels I like to put in my email is family communication, disruptive behaviors, resources, again, just like the digital downloads. Maybe I go by skill or grade, completed, PD, admin, etc. And now whenever I get an email and I complete it, let's say I get a PD that needs to be done over the summer by admin, I go through the email, I complete the PD, and then I drag and drop it into the admin or the PD section, and now it's done and my inbox is at 0. So essentially it's like one big to-do list. Let's say I have a family reach out with a question, it's my office hours, so I sit down to respond, I respond, and then I drag and drop it into the family communication label, and my inbox is at 0 and it's already done, so I don't have to search through my inbox looking for that email, trying to remember that I had to respond to it, or forgetting altogether. The fifth and final classroom organization hack I have is your grading system. Now, true story, it's very easy to have your 2-grade mailboxes or basket fill up. I actually had a principal come into my classroom and ask me when I was gonna get caught up on grading all those, and I was super embarrassed because I was overwhelmed with all the papers and trying to figure out what to grade and what not to grade. By the way, if you have questions about that, make sure to check out past week's content because I cover in depth the answers to all those questions. So instead of having mailboxes, which I did with Kinder, instead of having a to-do or a turn-in basket or a 2-grade basket, which I did in second grade and didn't work, I ended up using milk crates. So what I end up doing is I label the milk crate and I put file folders in it based by student name or student number. And then when students have to turn in something, instead of having mailboxes, they go find their name, open it, put the paper in, and close it. Now what I like about this is it's easy to transport from back and forth from home to work if I'm taking work home. I actually ended up not doing that after about my second year. I talk about that more on this, in future weeks' content and in the past, so make sure to check that out. But also to take things back and forth, but it's also easy to find all the resources from that student. So if I have someone like, speech come in and they want to see work, or maybe a diagnostician come in and they want to see resources from or student materials that they've done or completed work, they can go and I can grab the resources from their name from that week and give it to them to look at. It also helps me grade things quickly because the stuff I have them put in the milk crate are typically participation stuff. So they're quick, easy things that I can grade quickly, and then I send home back every week. And it makes it easy to grade because I can listen to a podcast or music and I can grade them quickly. And what I end up doing is I gather assessments and I grade all those at once because those are things I'm actually inputting into the grade book. So participation work, I typically put in the milk crate. So let's say they need, for participation points for my grade book and how it's set up, they need 5 math assignments. Those 5 math assignments are in the milk crate. I check them, they got them all done, they got the question correct that I'm looking for, and then I'll give them the 5 days worth of points, so they get 5 points. Maybe they only turned in 3, they get 3, etc. like that, such and such. And then let's say we have a unit assessment, I take all those and I collect them at once. And then when it's time for my grading day, I just sit down and grade all the assessments at once, making grading faster because I'm grading the same thing over and over again for things like assessments. So like I said, it helps participation grading at once. It helps you gather assessments and grade those at once. It's easy to gather student work or data for IEPs or anyone who needs to see student work or examples, and it makes it easy to take from home or to my desk or throughout the room. And then it's organized instead of one big chaotic pile of stuff. So that wraps up the 5 classroom organization hacks I highly recommend you use to set up your classroom for an easy school year. So let's review them really fast. The first one is a student resource center. Instead of having all your resources spread out throughout your room, making disruptive behavior rise during transitions, make sure to have it all in one area. Clearly teach classroom procedures. That way students aren't tempted to disrupt class when they need something like a pencil. Second thing is to color code your classroom library. It'll take a lot of work now, but once you do it, I'm serious, my classroom library is still color coded to this day. It makes it so much easier for your students to check out a book and for you to get them the books that they need at the skill level they're at. Third thing is a paper system. Having a system to not only organize your paper resources when you get them, but also on how they enter and leave the room so you don't have clutter on your desk and you lose your assignments and your materials mid-lesson like I have. Fourth thing is a digital system. Instead of going to the download section of your desktop or TPT and searching all the things you've researched, unable to find something to then rebuy something to then find the original thing, I highly recommend you create a digital system from day one that's going to help you stay organized so you're not wasting time later when you're prepping and planning. And the fifth thing is your grading system. How are you grading the assignments so you're not overwhelmed and you're not getting behind, and it keeps things easy and cohesive so it's easy to keep up to date on your weekly grading and to put things in the grade book faster, and you don't have a big 2-grade pile stacking up like I have in years past. So those are the 5 classroom organization hacks. I hope you found this helpful. If you did and you liked one of these strategies or tips, which one are you going to be using this year? Make sure to comment in the comment section if you see one, or send me a DM on Instagram or TikTok. I would love to chat. If you want more resources on setting up your classroom, I have a couple resources for you. The first one is the Classroom Setup Guide. In this guide, I take the top 10 most commonly asked questions about setting up your classroom, and I take time to answer each one of those questions. Plus, I already created content for that question. So if you want to listen to a further, more in-depth explanation on YouTube or my podcast, you can check out that guide and I link to those. And also, if you want to get more free content on classroom setup, I have a ton of content now on setting up your classroom. So make sure to tune in wherever you're tuning in from. Make sure to go back through any of my past week's content because I have a ton on classroom setup. Speaking of which, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe wherever you're joining in from or leave a review. It would mean a lot to me to get more content to the hands of more teachers who need it. So thank you so much for that. And if you want to take it a step further, you're wanting my help with done-for-you resources to save you time on setting up your classroom over the summer, I highly recommend you check out my Classroom Setup Bundle. This bundle has pretty much everything you can need to set up your classroom in an organized way. What I like about it is it has 5 different themes because I am an elementary school teacher. Therefore, I like my themes, and I like when the things I have in my classroom are all the same theme. I can't tell you how many times I'll find a resource out there that's super great, but I can't find a version of it that's in my classroom theme. So I went ahead and did that. Currently I have 5 themes. I'll probably be adding more here soon. So make sure to check that out. I have things like Meet the Teacher slides, I have classroom management, I have handouts, back to school night, like all the things you could need to set up your classroom, labels, class schedules, I have it. So definitely go check that out. If you are good on the resources to set up your classroom, but you're looking for more of the strategy, you liked the organization hacks I talked about here, but you want more in-depth help, I definitely recommend you check out my program, Classroom Kickstart Mini Course. Every year, I get a cohort of a couple dozen of teachers over the summer. And what we do is we go through the entire process of getting ahead and setting up your classroom the right way over the summer in less than 4 weeks. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Like I said, those first couple years, I spent hours on my classroom on the wrong things. I don't want you wasting your summer like that, so that's why I created a program that helps you set up and focus on all the right things over the summer in less than 4 weeks, because I want you spending most of your summer by the pool, hanging out with friends, traveling, getting coffee, reading books, whatever it is you do. So that's why I created this program. We talk about things like how to not only plan for the first couple weeks, but how to plan ahead, how to organize your classroom more in depth than we talked about here. We talk about things like how to have really good communication with families, and one of the most important things, how to have solid classroom management from the get-go. If you struggled with classroom management during student teaching, or this isn't your first year and you've been told in the past that classroom management is one of the hardest things for you, definitely recommend checking out this program because we have a whole week dedicated to classroom management. So if you want my help with the strategy behind setting up your classroom so you're starting off ahead, definitely recommend checking out this program. It's one of the things I absolutely love doing. I love setting up the classroom for the school year. It's something I kind of like doing, and I like setting up systems. So it's just kind of, I'm weird, I know, but I like doing this for teachers. So definitely recommend checking that out. So that wraps up everything. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, remember we are stronger together, and I'll see you in the next one, Teacher Bestie. Bye.